Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Christian Canales. Christian, what do you even say at this point?
I'd like to say it's good to be back, and it is. I'm glad to be on a mic chatting with you again, but circumstances are dire.
Yeah, to say the least. It's now not, 9 winless that Locomotive are on, and I tortured myself a little bit by looking up historically where that fell. That is now the longest winless streak in Locomotive history, and combine that with the fact...
What a season.
Right?
What a season.
12 games unbeaten, 9 games winless. Can we just make it an even 12? And then that way we've got, perfectly balanced as all things should be. But yeah, we're enduring the longest winless streak in team history, and coupled with the fact that I did look it up, and Mark Lowry lost 7 games across his final 2 seasons for Locomotive. So Locomotive with 9 losses this season, just to put that in some perspective. Obviously, accounting for the fact that, COVID affected seasons and all that sort of stuff. But this is more losing than we're used to.
Mark's already going to come up this episode. Do we have to bring him on this early?
I figured Mark could bookend. He could start and end. Christian, before we dive into things, obviously, for anyone finding us for the first time, bless you. And I'm sorry for what's about to occur. Locomotive obviously losing 5-0 this weekend to Phoenix, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all of the things that we saw in that game. We're going to talk about, as you mentioned, Christian, Mark Lowry and Indy 11's visit to the SWUP, the first time since he departed as manager of El Paso Locomotive. So we're going to round all that stuff up, and if you enjoy what you hear, we're on every major podcast platform, and we're on social media at Seriously Loco. You can also find us on Patreon. There may or may not be something dropping in the next couple of days regarding this return for the old boss. But before we dive into all that discussion, Christian, whenever you're on, we like to start things off. Christian's question with a little non-soccer talk. So what do we got tonight?
Yeah, so the beginning of the school year is here, and I actually, the first couple of days, I play Would You Rather a lot with my kids, just to get them thinking and to get them to talk to each other and stuff. So one of my favorites, and one of the kids' favorites that's come up these last couple of days is what I'd like to bring on the show today. So I want to know, Phil, would you rather take a visit to space once, like go up in a space shuttle, come back, hang out, and come back down one time, or money, no object, visit every country in the world?
Oh, interesting. I gotta go number 2. As fascinated as I was by space at different times throughout my life, I think visiting, seeing that, it just feels like the things that I really get enjoyment from, like food and just people and culture and that sort of stuff. I don't know that a visit to space could match that. As amazing as it would be, I think I would opt to visit every country. Although that, you can start to get into some weird scenario stuff of how safe are some of the countries, and I'm visiting, timing wise, hopefully we could work it out, but no, I think visiting every country, that would take it for me, I think.
Yeah. See, I go the opposite route. I think like as improbable as it is, I feel like it's more I don't know what the word is. There's just a higher probability of you visiting every country in the world than like making a trip to space. Like it seems more accessible. It might not be. I have no idea. I haven't crunched the numbers, but visiting every country in the world to me just seems more accessible than
That's
like
fair.
than like traveling to space. I don't know if I could physically even make it into space, but
Yeah.
assuming that I could, I think that would do it for me. I think just like seeing Earth, like all of Earth at one time,
Yeah.
I just can't imagine what that would feel like. So I lean that way personally.
No, I mean both would be amazing, I think, but no, it's a good question. I like that as a prompt. Let us know. Let us know on social media whether you'd rather go to space or visit every country in the world. I well, Christian, I think we just gotta rip the band-aid off because
Let's do it.
it's not going to get any easier the longer we put it off. Locomotive lose 5-0 to Phoenix over the weekend away in Phoenix, as we mentioned at the top of the episode. And this is the fourth loss in a row for Locomotive. And in those four losses, they have been outscored 17-3 by their opposition. I mean, the bottom line is like there were some changes, there was some tinkering, there was some, a little bit of like, let's try something else. And the bottom line is like the results recently, it's gone from not good enough to just like plain bad.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, there's not excuses, and like the excuses that there are, I feel like are all like self-inflicted problems by the team, and so it's just getting more and more frustrating because it just hasn't been good enough from anyone. At the beginning, it's easy to say like I feel like a lot falls on Brian, start at the start, but as this just goes on and on, like I think, and Mika brought this up, I believe, like now we have to start holding like the players accountable for this because at some point, like it's gotta be them, and it's more and more it's starting to look like that. I think that you know if it looks like the team is working out there and they're not being successful, then to me that's saying okay, maybe the coach isn't putting them in a position to succeed. But when it starts looking like the effort is not there, um, then I think that that's when it's starting to fall on the players. And personally, that's what it's looking like for me now. The heart is not there. Everyone looks to be going through the motions at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it really pops out. It feels like in this game, at least, it comes out in the last half hour. There's a real, just like, I mean, surrender. I'm not really sure like what the correct term is. It's 2-0 on 60 minutes. Couple of changes get made, and right around 70 minutes, Danny Trejo grabs his second of the night, and it was just like the wheels fell off from there. And I guess we can start with the fact that the mentality of this team, we praised heavily during their good run. We praised this team for the amount of like fight, and it just never say die, and the they were still conceding goals first often, and all these sorts of things, but they were fighting back. They were finding results from losing positions. I think they had the most point. There was a point in the season early on where they had the most points from losing positions. They had the most away wins, all that sort of stuff. All of that fight and like what you said, heart, like all of that just seems to have completely evaporated out of this team. And the tough thing is that like the personnel are the same. It is not anyone like drastically different. With a couple of, we've obviously lost Bensei. We talked about that last week because of how that all went down. But the bottom line is like, it's the same group of players, same in theory. It's the same, the same sort of mentality should exist in this group. And yet like, I'm not sure what has happened, but all of that fight, it seems like the first time that they get hit, like that first concession, you may as well blow the final whistle then.
Well, see, the problem is it's the same group of players. There's no options. And these guys are exhausted, So I feel for that, and so I think that falls on, obviously it's not the players' fault that there's no rotation for them.
Sure.
But also, like, it's your job, and even if your job sucks, you need to perform. Mm-hmm. So, like, suck it up is too harsh, that's not what I'm trying to say. But like, sure. You still got to go out there, and you need to at least, like, to the naked eye, look like you give a damn. And it doesn't. I think you could take someone who's never watched a soccer game in their life and show them this Phoenix match, the better part of the second half, and it's so obvious that the heart, the will, the drive is just gone there. So like I said, it's not all on them, but at some point it needs to be. And like I said, I think it's just because there's no one else. They're tired, they're exhausted, and that sucks, but it's still their job. Yeah,
I mean, a crazy night, and even, I mean, statistically speaking, you're talking about Phoenix only have 8 shots. Not 8 shots on target. They have 8 shots in the whole game. They had 5 shots on target. All 5 of them went in. Not a banner night for Benny Diaz, and we may talk about that in a little bit. But on the flip side, Locomotive create 12 shots. They actually outshoot Phoenix and get only 3 of those on target, all of which were simple for Rios Novo to save. So, I mean, it's just like we've talked about for a number of weeks now, the fact that the attack has been toothless. But this in particular felt like a defensive performance in which they clearly made a change, and Brian Clarhaut was not on the bench for this one, having been sent off in Miami, but clearly had something to say about the formation. They said they were trying something different during his coach's show appearance last week. And the different thing that they did was they played a back 3, a back 5, whatever you want to call it, where Mark Navarro actually played as a center back alongside Yuma and Eric McHugh. And then Nick Hines and Miles Lyons were deployed as wingbacks in the system. And I think maybe the most damning thing about this game is the fact that they changed the defensive setup because they've been leaking so many goals. They added, in theory, a more robust like central defense, and it is a center forward making runs, these like bending runs in behind that absolutely rip this defense apart. For all of the first 3 goals, it is central runs by Danny Trejo that undo this defense. And I guess that gets to your point of like, it is all the same guys, and it didn't even matter that they added an additional body in defense. They still got ripped apart by the obvious threat in a Phoenix team missing Manuel Arteaga as well.
And that's another thing that's so disappointing about what's happening, is that we like lauded Brian several times towards the beginning and middle part of the season because they had done such a good job so many times in a row of absolutely blanketing like the other team's it guy. And it like it didn't happen. It was they absolutely did not do that. He ran rampant. Trejo did, and so it's just another thing that has just become so disappointing about the way this team has performed recently.
I mean, the only bright spot of Trejo going crazy against Locomotive is we get to use my Vietnam flashback meme of Hutch with Trejo overlaid. But that's it.
And the funny thing is, like, as like shitty of a memory as that feels, like we only lost that game 5-4.
Yeah, we scored
several times.
4 goals, and we almost came back. Yeah, that
like,
and
we
that
haven't scored that many goals in like a month here.
I mean, if we want to get technical about it, we have. Let's see. You have to go back to get to our 5th goal scored. In these recent run of games, you do have to go to
San Antonio at home.
San Antonio at home, where we scored 1. That it was July 12th. So literally
like exactly a month
in
ago.
a month, we have scored 5 goals. And in this entire winless run, we've scored 6. 6 goals in 9 games. So that brings us, I guess, to the other discussion point here, which is, some changes in attack, the reintroduction of Dennis Kostishin over the last couple of games. We obviously saw a switch up with Petar Petrovic move to the bench, and Zacharias came in. This switch to the back 5, if you will. Hines in instead of Petar in terms of like maybe his defensive capabilities. And all that being said, like the change of shape, we had both Eric Calvillo and Liam Rose back in midfield. We had Lucho up top, and this team just looks not just unlikely to score a goal, but they look absolutely like they don't believe that they can score.
Well, I'm with you, and I've said, I think I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but like I like you said, I can't imagine them scoring a goal, particularly from open play. Like I don't even know what that looks like with this team anymore. And like I know that there's at least one person that'll listen and say like, why do we keep shitting on them? But like, what like please send us like a DM, something like tell us what we can be positive about here. Like,
just to
for me, there's zero positive about the last 2 or 3 weeks. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's 4 games now losing in a row, and I mean, I don't think it's inconsequential to say like 17-3 differential across 4 games. We're on average allowing 4 goals a game, like 4 point something. And we're scoring less than a goal a game. And 2 of those came in a 5-2 loss to RGV. So like, there's just no, I mean, to your point, it's hard to be, it's not even hard to be positive anymore. It's just not possible, because it's not like, hey, we're unlucky, we're creating a lot, and we're just like not getting the rub of the green, and then it's a couple of freak things, maybe a couple of bad penalty decisions, something like that. I mean, in this game, I think Yuma actually gets away with a penalty when the opposing player is booked for diving. On the replays, I was not convinced that I was happy to take it, because we are absolutely starving for some kind of luck, some kind of anything to go our way. And yeah, I mean, it was easy to imagine a world in which Yuma concedes 2 pens in this game. So there is not a lot to be positive about. It was to the point where I couldn't even engage when a Phoenix fan was like, hey, I think the referee was actually favorable to you guys, I wanted to reply and just say, it ended 5-0. Can't you leave us with anything? like we just have to also die? Like, yeah. Players sent off, all this stuff. We'll talk about Benny Diaz maybe in a second, but yeah, the bottom line is like, it's beyond the like, hey, let's look for the positives. Let's look for the, 17-3 over the course of 4 games. Like, it's been a fucking disaster, and there's really no other way to spin it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, unless things turn around like severely right now, like, this is shaping up to be worse than last year. After how many matches are we now? After 23 matches now, we have, I believe, 3 less points than we did last year. So, quantitatively, even though we went on a 12-game unbeaten run, we are at a point where we're in worse shape than last year. Yeah. And like at the beginning of June, if you would have told me that, like, I wouldn't have bought that for a minute. But here we are.
I mean, it is really shocking because it just feels like this team, hindsight over the course of this whole season, it's obvious that this team thrives on confidence and thrives on that good feeling, I guess. I mean, this is a team that at one point in the season won 7 games in a row, which feels like a million years ago. And it was, because that run ended June 3rd, but like, it feels like a long time ago, but it also is, it's almost like, not to like mix sports analogies, but it almost feels like a team, like in like Formula One or something like that, pushing too hard at the beginning of the race, then your tires are just fucked by the time you get to the halfway point. And the bottom line is, like, this team, amazing when it was those same 11 players week in, week out, right? Like, just 11 or 12 guys basically playing every single game. And we're now seeing the effects of that, which is these guys are completely burned. They've got nothing left to give. They've got no confidence. There's just, I don't know what happens, because, like you said, this is as bad as it's ever been. And I know, for all of the criticisms of last season and Hutch that we had, like, which I believe were valid, we weren't going out and losing 3 games in a row, conceding 5 goals. Like, that's crazy. And this feels like a new low in terms of recently lost one of our, more consistent players to a transfer. Plus, we're on this crazy losing streak. There's no one down the bench that we're looking to that's like, that can really pull us out of it. We're not looking at a crisis, like an injury crisis or anything like that. It's like, these are the guys. So now Mark Lowry comes to town.
No, it's just upsetting. And what's funny is I can't get away from this same problem, because I feel like Locomotive and my Premier League team, Wolves, are like in the same situation where they're just like refusing to sign players. I can't get away from that. And like, it's even more frustrating because you look left and right and other teams in the league are signing like no one's business. And we've asked the question, we've put the question to the team several times, and it's, well, we're looking, if the right guy comes along, we'll get him. And like, it's bullshit. Like, I'm calling it now. Like, it's bullshit. Like, there is no way you cannot, like, don't fucking like insult us. Like, there's no way you can look us in the eye and tell us, well, the right guy just isn't there.
Right.
When there's players flying off the shelves. Yeah. Like, there's players flying off the like toilet paper when gas is short of supply. Like,
Sac Republic bought Christian Pirano.
Yeah.
Like, that was a player that was available. And I'm not saying that they would have sold to us and maybe the optics of selling to another team in Texas would have been bad, and maybe the price would have been steeper or something like that. But he clearly wanted to leave. And when he broke that contract, we were good. Like, we had a shot when he first exercised that release clause or whatever the hell that was. Mm-hmm. We were actually on a really good winning streak. And there were suggestions that, like, hey, what if we're in for him? LOL. I didn't think he'd actually go to another Western Conference team. And yeah, meanwhile, New Mexico signs a striker on loan from Inter Miami. That was announced today, I think, as well. Today. So the bottom line is, like, everybody in the West is strengthening. And this is no disrespect to the players specifically, but the fact that Jose Carrillo is our only signing, since the season began, with as small of a squad that we have, it's embarrassing. Like, it really, and again, that's not a commentary on the player itself. It's just the fact that we knew we needed reinforcements. Like, you can't just make your way through the season with 15 players you can count on. And that's what we tried to do. Like, we tried to just make it with a bench that's really only practically 13 or 15 people deep.
And one of them is like an 18-year-old. Like, yeah. No offense. That's no offense to Diego
again
or Lalito, but like, it's not fair to them.
Yeah.
You know, yes, Diego's on a professional contract now. Mm-hmm. Yes, so is Lalito, but like, it's not fair. Like, yeah. There is no way that a team who, like, 2 months ago was by all accounts a title contender, mm-hmm. like, you shouldn't be on the bench.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Yeah. Well, and it felt similar to last year where it was like, oh, you know, like, we're involving Diego and Joel and all these guys, like, in the season because we believe that they're good enough. And at the same time, like, it felt very much like, okay, well, we're pretty injury hit right now, and this is just what we're doing, rather than going out and spending money on professionals. And again, no disrespect to the players. It's just, they should be like, if you're rounding out your bench every week with a bunch of youth guys, it just sends the message that, like, we aren't serious about building a competitive team, because there are ready-made professionals, not guys who are going to develop, like, while we're watching them, guys who are already ready to go, who can help, like, bring those guys along. And, you know, we love what they've done with the academy and, like, the fact that they've brought through professional players, but it cannot always be the go-to of, like, well, we have the academy when we don't have anybody, like, of the caliber needed to come on and make a difference for this team. And that's just, like, it's just so clear that every team is strengthening in some way. Like, I mean, even the teams that have done it in a crazy way, like Tulsa, that have just, like, done insane transfers, all this stuff. And Indy 11, who comes to town, Mark's pulling out all the stops in terms of, like, random transactions around the league. They've won 2 in a row now. And Indy went from being like, when this game was marked out on the calendar, we're thinking Mark's going to come to town with this, like, Indy team limping in, and we're high flying, and we're going to, like, show him that we don't miss him at all. And now Indy's the team in form coming in, and we look like we can't buy a win. So what happens Saturday when Mark makes his return to the SWUP?
It's not going to be good. And, like, I think that it's going to be a very, like, toxic moment in club history. I think it's going to get really ugly, from a supporter standpoint. And not like there's going to be fights. That's not what I mean. I just think that there is a lot of reasons for people to be upset right now. And the former manager, who was very admired in his time here, coming in and absolutely laying waste to us at home, is just it's gonna make a bad situation worse.
It's
and I would like, and that is my prediction. I think we're gonna get our asses handed to us.
It is an Indy team that's like figured it out. I mean, the real knife twist here is the fact that last time out, a lot of their fluidity and everything came from deploying Sebastian Velasquez, who we kind of thought was finished, as a striker. And it actually worked quite well, although the goal does come from just Diz gets a header in, and that's what causes the winner. But those who follow John Morrissey over at USL Tactics and looking at this last performance for Indy, they did a lot of interesting stuff. Douglas Martinez played right back, who I could have swore was Mark's worst enemy, but they have reconciled. Yeah, so Douglas Martinez played striker midweek and then dropped back to right back at the weekend.
Mark just loves converting people to right backs.
Yeah, anybody can be a right back in Mark's eyes. And yeah, acquitted himself well, I think. But Velasquez up front, that was weird and gave me all kinds of narrative, like, phobia of the fact that, like, let's be real. If Sebastian Velasquez and Meshach Jerome and Mark Lowry, like, all come back into the SWUP and get a result, like, there's really not going to be a lower feeling than that. Like, it really just can't get any lower. And that's not specifically because of disdain personally for any of these people, just to be clear. Like, Mark, I still consider us like friends, broadly with Mark. Although the way things have gone, like, obviously we, there's all kinds of emotions tied up in that, but I don't have any hate for Mark Lowry, right? And at the same time, I really will not enjoy him taking a little lap of honor, like, on the pitch, as he walks around the SWUP to celebrate the victory. Like, I'm not about that. And yet, It seems likely.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. Like, I think that's what it comes down to. I'm very scared for Saturday because, the trend, because of the trend that we spoke about, like, 17 goals conceded in 4 games, 3 goals scored. Like, we've been shut out now in consecutive games.
Like, other than the law of averages, like, there's no, like, quantitative reason to believe that we will score this match.
Yeah. It is, man, it is brutal. I will say, so, the last home match after this away run, which did not go to plan, the last home match had an announced attendance of, about 6,800. How many people are turning out on Saturday to watch Locomotive versus Indy?
People love fireworks, Phil. You gotta remember
Never
that.
underestimate the fireworks. I will say, and this is actually jokes aside, we joke about giveaways and stuff like that, but friend of the pod and like a fantastic local artist in El Paso, Patrick Gabaldon, his Noche de Locos kit is being given out, I believe, at this game. Or is that the following game?
It's in September. It's the September match.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's the Monterey Bay game. Mm-hmm. September 2nd, I think, is the one.
So go to that one, guys.
Go to that one. Yeah. If you have to choose, swerve Indy for sure. My bad. I'm like giving a shout out. No. So I saw the announcement. I jumped the gun. And Noche de Locos is obviously in September. So whatever. Brain fart. What days, times, who cares? So Indy this Saturday, it's gonna be a disaster. I am for those who know, I am involved in the USL show, and we do a pick'em league where we pick 10 matches out of the USL Championship in League One each week. Indy versus El Paso was one of the picks this week. And for the second week in a row, I have locked Locomotive's opponents for 2 reasons. The first is, and as a Locomotive fan, I am hoping that I can reverse jinx them out of their losing streak. Because lock picks count for 3 points instead of 1 point in each of the categories. So anyways, I've locked Indy now to win because the second reason is it's a win-win for me. Either I've jinxed them out of the losing streak or I get the points. There's really no in between. And so, yeah, I am doing my part is what I'm saying. From a karmic standpoint to try to shock Locomotive out of this run. The last thing we'll say, Christian, I think like we got a question or a couple of questions regarding like, are there lineup changes? Like, are there tweaks? Are there things that Locomotive can do to change things? And like, without being flippant and without like dismissing the question, I think the reality is like basically what we discussed, that there just isn't enough like juice on the bench to give us any reason to think that a change or like one, swap of a player who hasn't been starting consistently like is suddenly going to shock this team into form.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can walk them step by step through that answer, right? Like, we've tried we tried Yuma this week, and I don't remember if he started the match before or if
he came on 42 minutes of the Miami game because Jose got injured, and then started Phoenix. Yeah.
So we've seen plenty of Yuma. Eder, we heard, was in a boot at practice on Tuesday, so who knows if he's available.
Yeah.
Mark is an undroppable at this point.
Mark, I do want to give a quick shout out to Mark Navarro. He's literally our only good player. Like, he's been like, bless him for the like continuing to play. Because if he mentally checks out, I don't know that we'll complete a pass against Indy, let alone stand a chance of actually getting a result.
Yeah, I think he may have had our only like good chance on Saturday. I think that came from Mark. So, Mark is an undroppable. So, I mean, so we've seen what he brings and right now, not solely on him, but him being there is not going to change much.
Yeah.
We've seen Jose and he still looks like he's either not up to it, which I don't think is the case, or still acclimating himself, which is more likely.
Yeah.
Bense's gone. We saw Nick on Saturday. Eric's been in there, and bless his heart, like, he's gassed.
He's suffering, yeah.
Anders gone, and we've seen Miles there, So that's defense. That is every single defender on the team.
Yep.
Midfielders, one reason or another, Pitar has kind of lost the sparkle that was there earlier in the season. Liam's there every week, so we already know what he brings. Same thing, Manny, again, love him to death as a guy, but even since last year, after he got hurt at the beginning of last year, he has just not been what we wanted him to be or what he expected him to be. Eric is there, week in, week out, also exhausted.
Yeah. Eric looks like
from playing, all 90 week in, week out, and caring for a newborn, dealing with that too.
Yeah. Eric looks particularly impacted too, because these last few weeks, like, he's had some pretty rough performances, I would say, and
he's carrying a lot too, because he's also, outside of Yuma, I think, and Yuma hasn't been there for a long time this year. I think a lot of the leadership falls on Eric's shoulders too. So that's just one more, straw on there. Dennis, like Pitar, is not the player who he was at the beginning of the season. Again, all of this is not saying that they have lost their like talent,
Or that
like
they're
the
bad.
Monstars didn't
Space
come
Jam.
and suck it out of them, but like there's a limit to everything.
Yeah.
Chapa is also has not been it. I think all season that's a recurring theme. Even when we were doing really well.
Yeah.
And then you have Joel, Diego, and Lalito, who should not be the guys, like you said, that we're looking to change the direction this team is heading in.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, like Lalito is a good example. He looked decent against Miami and we lost 4-0. Like, it didn't matter. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, is like, each of these guys have been fine, like in patches, and it just isn't adding up to anything. Like, it's not moving the needle for the team. And again, not a criticism of them or their performance, just strictly like not enough guys are putting those performances together on the same day for it to matter. And once it gets out of hand, it gets out of hand recently.
Mm-hmm. So that's midfield, and then Lucho is just struggling, and I think him most of all.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see the disappointment in him, which is concerning, because I think it's most visible from him.
Yeah.
Kind of how disappointed he is with how things are going. But also, for better or for worse, like he is, I feel like more than anyone else, he is a product of how the rest of the team is doing.
Yeah.
He can only do as well as everyone behind him is doing. That doesn't excuse him from anything, but, if he can't get the ball in the box, then, what's he going to do? He can't bring it from the back line by himself.
Right.
Now Gomez,
now 2 full months since Lucho's first last open play goal in the 2-2 against San Antonio on June 10th. So, over 2 months now.
And he lives to score, so he I can just imagine where his head is at right now.
Penalties are the only thing he's scored since then.
Yeah. Zacharias, who at the beginning of the season had a very, very good run of form. Yeah. Again, for a long time has not been there.
Yeah, he is going 3.5 months since his last goal, period, which was in the 2-1 win against San Diego on April 29th.
Gomez, who, again, for all he does, kind of like Lucho, can't do it all on his own, and he's not gonna create shots on his own.
Yep. The credit to Gomez is that he had of the entire team in this winless run, he's the only player to score a result-altering goal, which was in the 1-1 draw at home to RGV. That was the only goal in this whole run that actually changed the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. And then who I haven't seen, who I assume is still part of the team, is Chris Garcia.
Yeah.
He has been completely AWOL for a while now. I don't think he's made the bench in weeks. I think July 29th. So a couple weeks ago, he came in off the bench in RGV.
But yeah, he hasn't
played more than 20 minutes since June.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless he's the guy,
right.
That's the roster.
Yeah. That's everybody.
So there is. I have no reason to believe that there is anyone that is coming to change things. The cavalry is not coming, as far as we know.
Oh God. Yeah, like we said, Indy 11 for those interested. They're coming off a 4-0 win over Birmingham Legion last Wednesday, and then a 1-0 result at Miami, which, typically, Indy beating Miami 1-0, not that remarkable. It is remarkable in the wake of Locomotive being just 2 weeks removed from a 4-0 loss in Miami. And in that match against Miami, Indy allowed just 7 shots from Miami, 2 on target, and obviously kept a clean sheet. That's concerning in and of itself, because we didn't limit anything that Miami did. They really had their way, I would say, for most of the game. And we're struggling to score. So if Indy comes in with even if they come in not to blow us out, they come in just with we're going to keep things calm in the Lowry way, where it's like, we're not going to allow a lot of shots. We're not going to allow a lot of chances. We're just going to keep it tight, and then look for our opportunities and set pieces, that sort of stuff. That is how we were so successful for so long, is we just really limited the other team and then took the couple, 2-3 opportunities that we had. And, matchup wise, it just feels like, it's bad timing. It's bad narratives. It's bad. There's so many things just stacking up against a Locomotive win here, not to mention we're just dog shit.
Yeah. And, like I said earlier in the match, why are we being so hard on them, and why aren't we being more positive, and why aren't we being more supportive fans? The hell are we supposed to come on here and say? Honestly, tell me what you want me to say. And if you really believe that it is a valid point, please, we can talk about it.
I invite it. I'm looking for reasons to hope and care. Because I'm struggling. I'm not going to lie. I hit a low point. As we close this out, I hit a low point against Phoenix because, as many know, Arizona does not participate in daylight savings time. Therefore, the match, which kicked off at 8 p.m. local time, was not at 10 p.m. Eastern time. It was 11 p.m. So when that debacle ended, it was 1 a.m. Should I have stayed up and watch it? No, I shouldn't have. That was a terrible decision. But it did bring me a level of clarity of watching that game and realizing that, number one, it's beyond, the project is spiraling. Now I think it's gone beyond the point of what are we doing, or how do we get this back on track? It's in danger of we're in danger of missing the playoffs in a league where it's impossible to miss the playoffs. The whole thing is in danger of coming apart again. And, the reality is it's gone beyond not good enough, and it's just not good. And I worry for this team. And there was some discussion, and obviously there were some there's a lot of stuff on social media and all this stuff. And the reality is you can say all that we want about hey, we have to do players tweeting. Yuma tweeting post-match hey, we can't talk. We have to just do the work, and we have to turn this around. Actions speak louder than words, essentially. And at the same time, there's no, we said, there's nothing for anybody to cling to in terms of hope, trust in this team that they will actually turn it around. To be able to burn the goodwill of a 12-game unbeaten streak in the same season as it happened is really crazy. And it takes, I think the fan base has been more than patient with this, low run. I think they've largely been pretty accommodating. And to go out now and lose 4 in a row by the margins that we're talking about, it's now you have to, we gave you a ton of slack, and now it's gone. And you've got to show us something now, because there's really, I can't give you anything else in terms of goodwill or anything like that. It's I've got to see something before I can invest my own emotion back in these results.
Yeah, and that's that. We talked about how how much Brian endeared himself to the community, like at the beginning of the season. Like, if this was Hutchinson having this run this season, like
Protests.
there'd be pitchforks outside outside the stadium, because that was just the relationship was never built. He didn't take the time to build that relationship, and to his credit, Brian did. But like at this point, it like you said, like it's gone. The bank is completely wiped.
They're overdrafted.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that, I mean, with the pitchforks thing, it's like you're gonna have El Paso going full Gaston out there, kill the beast or whatever. Just yeah, no, it is obviously a down period, and I say all this with the full understanding that, like, I know the players aren't happy about it. It's obvious, right? I know that the coaching staff isn't happy to lose and all that stuff. And like, that doesn't save us from speaking our mind about when it's not good enough. Like, there is no outlet for supporters, right? Like, this is the outlet. This social media, all that stuff is the outlet. We don't have any control over what happens on the field, over what happens in terms of results. The only thing we can do is like support the team. And like, when things get tough, like, it's not going to be positive. And the reality is the team now has to find something, has to cling to something. I don't know what that something is. They have to find something though to keep the season, on somewhat from spiraling completely out of control. And getting a result against Indy, maybe it starts to pull them out of that hole. But man, it just feels like a long, long way off, given how the team's been playing recently. And mentality wise, I mean, I think it was on display. We didn't get much of a chance to talk about, we kind of focus elsewhere, but Benny Diaz, just kind of losing his head in this game, felt indicative of kind of a larger mentality issue, in the team, in that there was a certain point in this game where it felt like Benny either had just completely lost it or was actively trying to be sent off. I couldn't tell which, like, if he just wanted out or if he was just genuinely so frustrated that he had completely lost it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you can question it because those are not, it's not like he was doing things that he's been doing all season, but doing them poorly. Like, that's one thing. And I think that's what we're seeing from a lot of the team.
Yeah.
He was just completely deviating from anything we've seen him do this year. And I can't imagine that was the game plan. Like, to say, go out there and just, like, dive at people 10 yards outside the box. Like,
mm-hmm.
That couldn't have been, there's no way that could have been confused or misunderstood or just executed poorly. Like, it's just a poor decision, and he continued to make poor decisions, like sprinting across the field to get into what was a pretty mild skirmish compared to other things that we've seen this season. Like I don't get it.
Yeah. No, it was strange. And I mean, the reality for Locomotive is that they've done this a handful of times where it's like they kind of try to start fights at the end of games where they're mad that they're not going their way. And I think they think that it shows like that passion and that they're fighting, but like it actually does the opposite, I think, for a lot of people, where it's like, hey man, you lost and now it's just getting embarrassing. Like, it doesn't actually show me that you're fighting. What would show me that you're fighting is that you don't concede 5 goals, or that or
you score a goal.
Yeah, or close somebody down or anything. Like, just, that is where like the fight is, right? Like, even McHugh, as shattered as he is, like makes a pretty like desperate goal line clearance at one point to keep it. I think that was like at 2-0 or 3-0. And that's the sort of stuff where it's like, okay, at least I know you're trying, right? Like, at least I know you're still sprinting. This stuff where you go and try to pick fights or try to cause issues at the final whistle. It's just like that to me is like, it goes, there's a time and place for standing up for your team and all that sort of stuff. And there's the time and place to just like gracefully bow out of an ass kicking. Yep. So, yeah. Yep. Well, all that being said, ending on a positive note, this has been Seriously Loco. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. You can find us on social media at Seriously Loco. Like we said, we've got Locomotive play Indy 11 this weekend. I won't judge anyone for not going. I won't judge anyone for not watching. There's a lot of stuff here. And the crazy thing is that I know a bunch of you sickos will still be watching and will still be in attendance. And again, no judgment, especially for those season ticket holders. Like, the club already has your money. You may as well get something out of it. But if it's going to cause you pain or cause you whatever, and you skip, no judgment.
Take care of yourself.
Exactly. Like, this is self-care first and foremost. Like, if it's going to make you, upset or anything like that, just maybe steer clear. But the bottom line is that Locomotive in a bad way right now. It doesn't look like it's getting much better. And yet the thing about sports is that there is always the next game, and who knows what will happen when Lowry comes to town. But it's not looking good. After that match, because we are sickos through and through, we will be back to discuss whatever happens. And be sure to check out our Patreon for perhaps a little piece outlining the old boss's return to drop soon. But with that being said, hope everyone has a good rest of your week. And we'll speak after the Indy game. But until then, stay loco.